Welcome everybody to Optics Studio. My name is Aaron Glanfield, and today we are going to be talking about how we can create bump maps in After Effects to create textures for things like this, as well as a title sequence like this. And then in a follow-up video, we will be talking about how we can apply all these principles to create another title sequence, something like this. So today we're going to be talking about dynamic as well as static bump maps. And to give you an example, the first one I was showing you in the planet scenario is more of a static bump map where nothing is changing or nothing is moving within the bump map itself. And then the title sequence here that I have, the bump map is actually evolving and changing to create a animated title sequence. And that's the same with this title sequence I have here. I have two different bump maps applied. One is to create this bevel edge for the title itself, and then the other is the dynamic bump map, which is being used to create like this erosion effect that is animated within the title itself, but to create like a 3D depth version of it as well. Alright, so let's get started. So we'll start by creating a new composition, and we'll call this one the planet, where we'll apply the bump map as we have seen. And in here we're going to be using Element 3D. If you don't have Element 3D, you can still use these principles to apply a bump map to anything you like a title sequence. But for this one example, we are going to add a new layer, a new solid, and we're going to call this one Element. And then we are going to go into the effects and bring in the plugin Element. And then we'll create another layer, just make sure we're all organized here, and call this one bump map. Hit OK. And then we are going to pre-compose the bump map and move all attributes. And then within the bump map, we're going to create whatever it is that we want for our bump map. So in the effects here, we're going to use the effect called fractal noise and put that in. And then for this one here, I'm going to change this one to cloudy. You can of course change it to whatever you want, depending on whatever kind of pattern you're looking for. But this one's going to be cloudy, and I'm going to change this to spline. What happens in a bump map is, if you're not familiar, is all the brighter tones are the bumps that actually stick out towards you, and as it gets darker, it's what moves further away from you. So what you're seeing here is basically if this was a mountain from a bird's eye view, where you're looking right from the top, looking down. This would be the tip of the mountain, and then it's slowly going down into the valley, which would be the dark spots here. I'm going to create a greater contrast, so brighten up the brights and darken the darker spots, and then turn down the brightness to bring even more contrast between the two tones. Something like this. Then I'm going to go into transform, and I'm going to scale it up, and then I'm going to change the evolution just to make it a little bit different and increase the complexity, gives you a little bit more detail, assuming that your graphics card and your CPU can handle it. That is going to be my bump map for this. So I'm going to go back into the planet composition, bring the element on top, and I'm going to take away the visibility of the bump map because we don't need to see that. In Element, I'm going to go to Scene Setup and go to the V1 Primitive Models and go scroll down until I get to Sphere HD, and this is going to be my planet here. And I'm going to click OK. Now, in order to apply the bump map to the surface of the sphere, we need to go to Custom Layers, Custom Texture Maps, and then we're going to go to Layer 1, going to assign it to the bump map composition. Put effects and masks, and then go back to the scene setup. Within the materials of the sphere, I'm going to go to the normal bump map setting here. Click on it, and then I'm going to load up the bump map. And as you can see, it's already applied. And click OK. And then you can do whatever you want here. You can increase the bump or reduce it. Nothing. I'm going to set it somewhere around here. You can play around with the settings, so if you want to create like some sort of greenish worldly look, you can do that. We're going to click OK, and then there is our planet. So we can add a camera, click OK, and then you can look around it all you want. And of course, as you can see, you've got nice texture maps in here. Zoom in, get a better look. All right, so this is your texture map on your orb. Another thing you can do is add an adjustment layer if this was a planet of some kind, and then within the adjustment layer you can add the effect called glow and apply that to the adjustment layer. You know, turn the threshold down a bit, and then the glow radius up, glow intensity down, and then you have basically a glow off the planet here. Alright, so that's how you add textures within Element 3D. Now I want to go over how we can do dynamic textures to create that really neat title forming out of water look. Alright, so we're going to create a new composition. Call this one title sequence. Okay. And then we're going to follow a lot of same steps. So we're going to go to layer, new, solid, and this is going to be our bump map. And then I'm going to go to layer, new, solid, and this is going to be our background, our water background. Hit OK. And then we're going to use text to create a title. This one I'm just going to call it water, and I'm using this Cabezon, if I'm saying it right, Cabezon text from Adobe. And I'm going to scale it up a bit, center it. Alright, and now I'm going to create my bump map. So I'm going to go to bump map, I'm going to pre-compose that, move all attributes, hit OK, go within to the pre-comp, and I'm going to add the fractal noise, and then I'm going to do something similar, again, change it to whatever it is that you're looking for, but cloudy, spline for me. I'm going to change it to contrast, as well as the brightness, something like that. And then in order to sell the water look, there's a few things I want to do. This is where it becomes a little bit more dynamic and makes it really pop, which is really neat. So the evolution here, I'm going to keyframe that at the beginning of the sequence, move it all the way forward, and then I'm going to change the evolution so that it's moving something like this. Now that's not quite enough to make it look like water. And you'll see once it's all in that it'll actually look pretty good, but I'm going to actually transform and scale that up a bit. And then I'm going to offset the turbulence, so I'm going to keyframe that, move all the way, and I'm going to move it so that like water is flowing. Something like, let's see. Something like that, maybe a little bit faster. Something like that. Alright, then we're going to go back into the title sequence, and on the water, I'm going to drop the CC glass, and you don't see any effects yet, because it's black, but we're going to change the bump map to what I created as the bump map, and hit effects and masks, and then I'm going to change the color of the water to very light, well, dark blue. Choose one of the lighter hues. Pretend it's like a nighttime shot. That's what I'm working on here. Hit OK, and then within the effects CC glass, I'm going to change a few parameters here. I'm going to increase the height and the softness. And then the lighting here gives you an option to use the light that is part of the effect, but I'm going to use After Effects lights here. I'm going to go to Layer, New, Light. It's going to be a parallel light. It's going to be white. I'm going to hit OK. Move that light over to the right. And then I'm going to take the same effect and I'm going to copy and paste it into my title sequence because I want it to mimic what is happening beneath it. So all the bumps and everything match the water below it. So it's actually forming out of the water. The difference that I'm going to have here is that the displacement is going to change here. So I'm going to keyframe the displacement, and I'm going to actually turn it up so it's spread out a lot more. So it kind of looks like moonlight to some degree shining off the water, or some sort of light. And then I'm going to move it over, and then I'm going to bring the displacement down to 0, keyframe it there, you know, to whatever makes sense. And then on that same spot, I'm also going to need to keyframe the height. I need to see where that is. So, there we go. So right about there. And then I'm going to bring the height down to 0 as well. Give it a flat look. And then what I'm going to do, just so you can see what's going on here, I'm going to go ahead and let that play out. Okay, so there we have it here. You can see that the title actually gets formed out of the water. The only thing in my mind that I think is missing is I want the background to disappear. So I will keyframe the opacity of the water, T for opacity, and keyframe that. Keep that 100, and then quite a few frames later, I'm going to bring the opacity down to 0. So it's fading away, leaving just the title. I'm going to play that through again. And there you have it. Well, that's it for today. In the next video, I'm going to be showing about how we can apply these two principles to create a bump map in that title sequence where I showed bevels as well as erosion effects to create a 3D effect that will really make your title sequence pop. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.